Well, yo, bro.
Hey, sis, how are you?
How are you? How are you? How's it going? Ready for a new session of Yo, bro and Hey, sis tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I need to talk with you, and I think we've got someone else on the line, too.
Yeah, that other guy on the line. Hi, guys, everyone listening.
Well, I wanted to say the miracles of computers and phone stuff. This is very interesting considering the different locations that all three of us are at, and we're here able to talk to each other so that we can get it out to our viewers. I just wanted to comment on that. What do you guys think?
Let's let Bro go with this one.
Okay, well, first of all, it's pretty awesome to me because we've got a Pennsylvania-Florida connection going on here, and so I'm down in tropical Florida, where I kid you not, it was gorgeous summer weather, and then all of a sudden, hurricane force winds and drenching rain for like 5 minutes, and then it's all gone again, and it's back to nice tropical weather. It's just like that. I mean, it just turns on a dime, and that's not the way you guys get rain at all. So up in Pennsylvania, it's completely different. So.
And the thing is that Akaeka, he is actually about 5 to 10 miles away from Hey Sis over here, and I think this is just it's very interesting, and it brings up the topic about computers, and how that's just really kind of cool. How is that so possible, computer man? Tell me.
Well, first of all, let's do that. But I want to just ask our guest. First of all, I want to welcome him. But second of all, I just want to ask him, would he take a second and talk about the pronunciation of his name so we have a chance to get it right here?
Do you want a backstory of the name or just the pronunciation?
Well, let's do the backstory on another segment, but definitely the pronunciation.
The pronunciation is nothing like how it's spelled, being spelled Akeaka. And in an actual, proper pronunciation, it's more like Akaeka, but it's...
So you're like a Kia store.
Yeah, well, kind of. My brother, King Bullet, he likes to call me Lord Ikea, but it's just simply pronounced Akaeka. The first A is very well pronounced, or very well predominant, being Akaeka. It's just a simple pronunciation is how I heard it pronounced the first time, and that's how it's going to be pronounced for me. I just figured keeping it simple and sweet for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I
Beautiful.
Just go, hey, I just say so, our special guest for the day.
So let me answer your question, sis. First of all, computers are at the same time wonderful, yet amazingly frustrating. It's like being in relationships. They're crazy, they drive you crazy, but at the same point in time, how can you live without them? So I'm going to ask you, how can you live without your computers?
Well,
I can answer that.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Considering the day and age now, I guess in a generational gap, like how Mom and even you there, Uncle Bro, can actually probably be saying, growing up without the enormous influence of computers, having to live without is not as big of a challenge as it is for my generation and generations following me, where computers is quite literally on a turning, or you turn everywhere you go and there's a huge computer staring you right back in the face. Computers quite simply made life more simple but yet it also made the world that much bigger with the simple reach of extending out your fingers and typing away. Having the effect of how you referenced it as a relationship and an actual relationship, frustration. I don't think I've seen a single computer that does not have a cork. And of course, that's the same thing that could be said about, relationships in general. I think the biggest difference between the two is that you can't sit down with your computer and have a tat-on-tat and actually get anything done. You can't just pull up your Xbox and say, listen, buddy, you're not working as well as you used to. We need to work this out. Unless you speak binary, I don't think that's going to work out very well.
0011100. Got it?
By the way, you just got the first letter. That wasn't even the whole.
Oh.
That wasn't even anything. That was just a letter.
Oh, well, hey,
Just a little bit of binary knowledge I know. But whatever.
Well, speaking of that, if you want to go in the psychological viewpoint of how that works in society these days, recently the AMA, the American Association of American Psychological Association, has now entered diagnosis for into the DMS as a psychological issue for being addicted to your electronics, your games. It's a huge controversy because a lot of gamers are up in arms thinking, oh my gosh, this is it is not. This is our way that we get out to the world when we can't, when we isolate, and this is how we reach out and blah, blah, blah. A lot of misconceptions is on this because you can't have a primary diagnosis as an addiction to gaming. You have to have an underlying diagnosis, another primary diagnosis, either chronic depression, general depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, something else that has gone psychologically, anxiety, general anxiety disorders. It brings you to this particular thing, and it can become an addiction. It can be used as a good coping skill to help to distract from some of your symptoms, but sometimes it could be used in the inappropriately way where you cannot function unless you are in front of your electronic and using your electronics on a regular basis. Just watching people walk down the street and almost get hit by cars or getting hit by cars because they're not paying attention to where they're walking. Go down in town. I'll go down in town and I'll be driving around and you can watch some people practically fall over or run into poles because they can't lift their head out of their phone. Not saying that they have this particular diagnosis, but it just kind of brings along the lines of how you can get a secondary diagnosis with this addiction to electronics, in social media, gaming, and things of that nature. And it has to be recognized because it has to be also dealt with. It's not saying that it's abnormal that you like to do these activities, but if it becomes everything that you do and it consumes your life to a point where it's unhealthy, then that's something that has to be addressed. It's like people like to be alone for a while, but if you consistently isolate yourself and never ever do anything outside of your home, that becomes unhealthy. So that's how you relate to something and can be a psychological situation.
Can I throw something in on that? Just real quick?
Sure.
Now, and understanding that, I'm with you 100%, but what makes that diagnosis probably a little bit more difficult as time progresses is the fact that now technology is quite literally used for our day-to-day lives. We have cars that drive themselves. We have phones that we can text and call, James Bond style, strictly off the watch on the wrist.
We can talk into our phones to do things.
Right. We're on the precipice, if you will, of artificial intelligence, truthfully. with robotics and engineering and programming is becoming more and more diverse and much more elaborate, if you will, that, an AI system is quite literally a lot closer to that in a sense than anything else. But in a psychological aspect, I think it's more of a competition between making the world a better place and making the world a much more simpler place, which, they see as similar, but in the process, combining the two things causes for a lot of repercussions that people don't often plan to have. Point in case, there was a huge complication with Facebook, how Mark Zuckerberg was having problems with, with the presidential election that just came up, and there was apparently Russian influence being used on social media like Facebook to influence voters to vote particular ways and so on and so forth. There's a lot of complications behind all that. And I'm pretty sure when Mark Zuckerberg was sitting there and he decided that he was going to create a social media page like Facebook, I do not think that was the first thing that came to mind. And that's where the complication lies, is the fact that we create these technologies to make things simpler for ourselves. Smaller phones, Bluetooth, hands-free devices, or, smart cars to be able to drive themselves, visual realities to make gaming and world life more, acceptable and more entertaining and stuff like that. But they don't realize the consumption of our lives that it really takes. Now with phones being walking computers, you can do everything off your phone. You can send emails, make phone calls, send text messages, all at the same time. And it's just a matter of 5 clicks and you're done. Unless you're, sits over here and you have to take 3 hours just to send a text message saying, "What are you doing today?"
Well, yeah, to give a little backstory, King Bullet, the youngest, he gets very, very frustrated with me because he can write me a well-written periods, uppercases, proper language,
Grammar, the works.
Grammar, to the T, text, and it can be a book long. And he can write it to me in like 15 seconds. I then respond to him, "Yeah, that's pretty cool," in about 15 minutes later. And it drives him nuts. Whenever we're doing something and we're trying to reach out to Akaeka. Yeah, well, I'm getting there. To try to coordinate getting together and things, I'll start texting and he'll just be like, "Just hand it over. Just hand it. You're taking way too long. I'll do it. I'll just do it." He's like, "Okay, anything else you want me to say?" And I'll be like, "Okay, well, can you text my boyfriend and tell him that we're going to go do this?" "Okay, anything else?" And I'm like, "Wait, did you text him?" "Yeah, I did that already. But I just said the words." He's like, "Yeah, what else?" I'm like, my goodness. Holy cow.
And that's where the reference really comes in, is the fact that our lives are ridiculously fast. There's no slowing down, and there's definitely not with technology. Technology was meant to keep up with the modern age, and with the modern age is technology becoming faster and faster to help keep us, ahead of the game. Life proceeds on just as quickly to catch up with technology, and it's a consistent back and forth race. And it's like, walking into a major city and just seeing those people walking the telephone poles. It's exactly the same. It's an analogy in a sense for what's going on, is eventually this race is just going to be us walking into life's telephone pole, and we're going to smack ourselves in the face and be like, when did we get here? Kind of thing.
Well, so I would like to actually throw this question out to Yo Girl, because in a sense, you kind of straddle both worlds. You are a computer man. That is you by nature. That has been you by nature since actually I almost can remember you. sitting in front of your Commodore 64 trying to teach me how to do that / repeat my name all over the screen, and I thought life was the coolest thing ever. And you were just like, that's my sister. Because you had already, or that I Spy game that I could never, ever freaking figure out, and you'd be just playing it with no thought. But that's all I've ever seen you is in front of electronics, and so you actually straddle both worlds right now, because you still have old school, but you are also very entrenched. I mean, that is what you do every day. I mean, you have to make sure that computer things and programs and your zeros and ones are all lining up the right way to work properly. How does that work for you in your not becoming addicted? Are you addicted? What is life like straddling both worlds? How does the computers work in your life?
Well, I would say the first thing is that what Akaeka said was really interesting at the beginning. Will we ever get to the point where we can interact with our devices? And we haven't so far. I'm completely with him on that. But if you look at some of the devices that are out today, like Alexa and
I was thinking about
the other assistants and stuff. Akaeka, it might be the case that that's exactly where it goes. Maybe one day your device is not behaving the way you expect, and you just might open up a philosophical discussion with it. So I think that was a good point, and it hasn't happened so far. It hasn't been a part of computers very prominently to this date. That doesn't mean...
Well, if you really actually think about it as General Joe peeps, don't actually know that, because we do talk to our electronics like they're humans. But they actually don't I don't know if there's a realization that, there is so much more behind what they see, because, the simplicity of how user-friendly it is becoming to most, you on your end, you kind of see it and it's just part of, that's just how you do it. But you've also been behind the scenes where you have to put those little zeros and ones in the proper place to make that program work. So you kind of have like a knowledge of that. How does that affect you?
Well, it actually helps me in a lot of ways. I understand at an abstract level what's happening behind the scenes when most people are doing things online. So for example, when you're doing your banking, I sort of have a pretty good sense for what's actually happening when you're signing into the online banking session, when you're pulling up your account balance, when you're transferring money from A to B, when you pay bills. And all I can say is it's crazy. It really is a different world. And it's hard to describe to somebody who has not entered that world. You have to have this sort of specialized outlook to sort of get into it. And if you haven't done that, it can seem like, why is this site down, or why is this computer asking me to verify my identity, or why does it take so long to do this action through the computer, but less time to do the other kind of action? And it's really like a big soap opera, but for engineers. So, engineers work with computers all day long, and they're very irrational. And there's all sorts of interesting situations where, the machine just doesn't want to do the right thing, and you want it to do something very specific, but it insists that it's not going to. And it won't give you help on how to remedy the situation. So, it's kind of like waking up in the middle of the night and the baby's crying. Does the baby tell you why it's crying? I think mothers have an instinctive bond with their babies a lot of times, so they can hear the cry and they can sort of know. But I think with men, a lot of times that's like all the baby cries sound alike. And I think it's the same thing with the computers. To an engineer, when a computer acts a certain way, it's like a baby crying, and the engineer sort of knows, oh, there's a problem with the remote server connection, versus, oh, there's a problem with the local web browser client, and meanwhile everybody else is going, huh? What? How could you tell that? So it drives people crazy, and I don't know that you really have to, I think you've missed out on something. You've missed out on that aspect of life if you didn't invest in it. So if you didn't start at a real young age trying to work with computers, I don't want to say it's impossible, and I don't want to say that people can't learn, because, they obviously can. But in terms of
look at Graham.
Comfortable. Yeah, that's true. But in terms of feeling comfortable with it, and really knowing what's going on, you really want to be working with these devices from an early age. I was thinking about the aspects of it that you mentioned earlier, Sis. The fact that there's now a designation in the clinical psychology, for gaming addiction. Do you really, I'm not sure how much people should, gamers should actually be worried, that they're going to be stigmatized by this. But what do you think if you were a gamer, or if you were advising some gamers about the psychological aspects of this new decision to recognize gaming addictions? What would you tell them, and what would you say would be like the things that they should probably focus on to be healthy?
Well, a lot of the times, Akaeka was talking about very difficult to diagnose with that particular psychological issue, mainly because the fact of the matter, because it can be used as a coping skill, and dangerous is a very tough piece. A lot of parents, they can hear that on their TV, and all of a sudden they want to get off every electronic and play on their iPad, and thinking that that's the cure for whatever it is that's bothering them. And also, how we've mentioned already, it is becoming of our daily activity, like you said with Alexa, because people are encroached in their houses, and they will say, "Hey Alexa, do this for me, do that for me," and they don't realize the convenience of not having to go do that themselves anymore. So it's a very difficult diagnosis, and to advise on how to deal with that, it is usually kind of the same as advice of any kind of other addictions you may have. Sometimes you have to completely eliminate it. You have to do some desensitization towards it. But you also have to kind of incorporate something to replace that addiction, to make it more, have more interest in something, find something that finds that interest just as strong as the addiction of the gaming or the social media or the electronics. It can make a huge impact on day-to-day life, and they don't realize how much of an impact it's making because they're engrossed in it, they don't see it. And that's kind of an important piece. So
and if I can throw my 2 cents in here on this as well, and I'm pretty sure Sis can agree on this behalf too. It's very hard, as she said, to diagnose a symptom such as this when technology is quite literally our day-to-day lives. But also on the fact that, nowadays technology is quite literally the future of our jobs. Everything is computerized. Everything is technical or technology influenced in some sense. It's just the fact that if you do not have the basics of understandings of certain technologies, certain programs, you will fall behind. It is just a simple matter of the fact that, you can't walk into a day-to-day job most of the time without having the basic knowledge of how certain things work. I mean, you got fast food restaurants becoming self-automated with the self kiosks, where you can walk into a fast food chain and order a cheeseburger and a large fry and a drink, and next it's being made for you. It's just, there's things that can do to replace our jobs to make it simple, and there's also things that, if you don't have the technology or understanding of the technology, you will not be able to keep up with it. So being able to diagnose whether or not, a gaming addiction is going to help benefit or decrease any kind of complications in a sense of reality is a really difficult way of trying to establish a sense of reality in that sense. Because, if you ask any gamer, hey, how do I get this to work on this? And they'll tell you, oh, listen, all you have to do is you got to plug this in real quick. You got to throw that on, and then you got to make sure that's on the right channel, as if they went to school to be in IT. I mean, most of these teenagers, I can actually say from the age of 13 to the age of maybe 23, might be a strong cutoff limit there, have more troubleshooting experience on technology than most people who went to school, who are in their 30s and 40s right now.
Well, I actually have to dispute you on that. As a former teacher of that age range of the 18, early 20s type situation, you would think with the amount of exposure to the technology that they have, they would be a lot more experienced and knowledgeable on how to take care of technology and how to deal with technology and actually just how to use technology. You give a 20-year-old a phone and they the crap out of it. But you give a 20-year-old a computer and you tell them to use a program on the computer to do something, they're completely lost. They have no clue. They can barely access Word documents, let alone figure out how to get on a particular program and access the program and utilize that program. And had to make how to walk through programs step by step with screenshots that showed exactly where you had to press your button to go through these things. And my older students who are in their 30s and 40s were able to get this faster and more and so that I thought was very fascinating, considering that, you know, they are so addicted and so attached to their phone and social media and texting and things of that nature, but they don't know how to use a general computer. They really don't.
In a sense, I mean, and I agree with you 100%. It's just the fact of what their limited exposure was. And that's where I guess the diagnosis would really come into. It's not and then in your sense, it's more of a disease of gaming, because more gaming is on consoles and phones nowadays. You don't really see a lot of real gamers on the computers, except for more hardcore gamers, if you will, who, you know, are like King Bullet, who has, you know, his laptop, his phone, his console and his big screen TV running all at the same time, because that's what he does for a living technically. But, if you have just your basic gamer who knows how to work an Xbox TV system and so on and so forth, that's their limited view of things, and they pull up their phone as a, third party, check social media. They know all the stuff to do on there, because gaming consoles and phones actually have a better GUI system than a graphics user interface than, most of the computers do nowadays, because of how it's specifically set up just to have them activate the things that they want to activate. So when it comes to actually doing anything productive, like saying on a work desk computer where you have to pull up like an Excel spreadsheet or a Microsoft Word document, send emails and all this other stuff, they could be absolutely clueless because it's not the things that they've been exposed to, and I guess that's why there's the controversy behind it all, because you have these gamers sitting here thinking to themselves, oh, I've tore apart my Xbox 3 times, but I put it back together and it runs great. I hacked into my phone at least 4 times now, and, to get certain apps that were illegal on the black market or something like that, and they think they know it all, and then you put them behind an actual computer, like Sis was saying here, and say, okay, well, here's what you need to do. Open up a Excel spreadsheet, put in this formula code to make it so, A squared and B squared equals out C squared with this particular formula. And they're like, wait, what? It's just a matter of what they're exposed to. They can say, well, I can do something similar on my phone. Can't I just do it there? And that's where the controversy really lies, I think.
True. That's very true.
It's just borderline.
Let me just throw out there. Look at my kid talking the fancy talk with the big fancy words.
It's a free syllable. I use an acronym.
GUI. You use GUI. Like, the regular people out in the real world are going to go, what, it was sticky?
Right. I said GUI.
I luckily know what GUI is because
that's why I had to
grow up
say
in a computer world.
I had to say graphics user interface. I said it, and it just became habit to say, GUI system. I'm like, yeah, no one's going to get that. As soon as the word came out, I'm like, no one's going to get that. The 3 of us will be like, oh yeah, the graphics user interface. You didn't know what that was?
Yeah, I was impressed. I was happy with that.
Yeah, did you hear all those fancy words coming out of his mouth? I'm so proud.
Sitting here, I'm eating that up. That was totally awesome.
Bye.